Hi, and welcome to the Lawrence High School Debate Judging Training video. In this video, we'll cover the basics of how a debate round works, what sorts of arguments you can expect to hear, and how you can give effective feedback to the debaters. I'd like to begin by saying thank you for volunteering. Without your willingness to give of your time, our students would miss out on important learning opportunities. Since mid-September, Lawrence High students have been traveling to tournaments around the state each weekend. These communities have recruited volunteers much like you to hear our students debate, and your work here is how we return the favor. This weekend, we'll host approximately 168 teams from 38 Kansas high schools. And by doing so, you ensure that our students will receive invitations for future tournaments from those schools so that we can continue to learn and to grow. Debate is an unusual activity. Imagine a football coach who could not be present when the game is played and could only learn about what happened by reading the feedback from the officials and listening to the recollection of the competitors. That is sort of how debate operates. Coaches are not usually in the room when the debate team competes in order to avoid any perception of inappropriateness. We can also learn about what happened. We can only learn about what happened by reading your ballot and listening to what our debaters tell us. And as such, I want you to reframe how you look at judging debate. Instead of seeing yourself as just an impartial official who decides the winner, I would ask you to think of yourself as an educator first. Yes, we are going to ask you to decide who won, but that is far less important than making sure you give good, constructive feedback about what each team did that worked well and what each team needs to do to improve. A good rule of thumb is to identify 3 positives from each team and 3 deficiencies from each team, and to make sure you explain them on the ballot. This is the only way coaches can help their students improve. And then when you decide on a winner, please be sure you explain why you voted for that particular team. This way the losing team knows what they need to work on to improve their chances of success in the future. So now let's talk a little bit about what a debate round looks like. In each debate, there are 2 teams. The affirmative team will offer a plan to address some need in the world, and in doing so will affirm this year's resolution. The negative team will oppose the affirmative team in some fashion. They might argue directly against the affirmative plan, or they may offer some alternative proposal that they believe is preferable for reasons that they should explain. During a tournament, each team will be required to debate both sides of the question, usually in an alternating pattern. A team that is affirmative in round 1, for example, is likely to be negative in round 2. During the debate, you will hear 3 different kinds of speeches: constructive speeches, cross examinations, and rebuttal speeches. The constructive speeches occur in the first half of the round, where each debater has an opportunity to help construct their team's positions. They will do this by offering a mixture of evidence from research and analysis to clarify the findings of that research. Each constructive speech will be followed by a cross examination period where a member of the opposing team has the opportunity to ask questions of the speaker. These questions may serve a variety of purposes: to clarify issues, perhaps identify logical problems with an argument, or even to set up future arguments. There are a wide variety of things that these questions can do. Now, the last 4 speeches of the debate are the rebuttal speeches, where the debaters have a chance to give responses to the other team's arguments as well as to advance their own position by clarifying and supporting arguments that they have already made. While the constructive speeches will contain a wealth of new arguments and information, the rebuttal speeches should not include any new arguments. They may, however, include new sources of evidence and analysis to better explain and defend a position that may already have been presented. So let's take a look at how these speeches are arranged in a debate round. When you register to judge, you will receive a packet of written instructions for judging. And in that packet, you'll see a chart much like the one you see on the screen here. It lays out the order and the time limits of each of the speeches. By this time of the season, the speech order should be second nature to the debaters, but we recognize that many judges want to follow along as well to keep a sense of where they are in the round and which speaker comes next. The packet will also contain a brief explanation of the responsibilities of each speaker so that the judges have some idea of what to expect from each speech. The judge instruction packet will also contain a description of what each team is likely to do to support and defend their respective positions. Let's take a look at those positions in a little more detail. Every affirmative team will offer a plan as a part of their first constructive speech. There are 5 key things to look for in each plan, and the affirmative team should include most or all of these as a part of their effort to convince you. We call these stock issues because they can generally be found across all affirmative cases. The first is harms. An affirmative team should identify some problem in the world that needs to be solved. Typical harms found in debate cases include the loss of life of an entire group of people, poverty, illness, or other damage to the quality of life for a group of people, damage being done to the national or global economy, damage to the Earth's environment, etc. Ideally, these harms should be important enough to merit the action of the United States federal government. This is what we call significance. For example, I might describe a plan to fix a large pothole in the parking lot at Lawrence High School. While the harm done to the vehicles damaged by that pothole is important to the families affected, it is probably not significant enough to merit United States federal government action, so it would not meet this criterion. Next, there should be some evidence that there is a barrier of some sort that has to be overcome, and that barrier must be inherent in the system. This is what we call inherency. These barriers are usually laws that must be repealed, attitudes toward an issue that prevents change for the better, for example, political positions in Congress, or some other similar element that is preventing change. Next, there must be some evidence that the affirmative plan will actually overcome that barrier and solve the problem that is described in the harm. We call this solvency. Finally, the plan the affirmative offers must fit under the wording of the resolution. We call this topicality. A special word about topicality. While arguments about this may sometimes feel like minor technical debates, the meaning of words is very important, as it has a huge impact on the issues that both sides must research and be prepared to discuss. So please, do not dismiss this issue until you've heard the arguments and weighed its importance in the round. The affirmative team is responsible for making sure their case meets these issues, although they may not present evidence of all of them in the first speech. If an affirmative does not meet one or more of these, you should expect to see the negative team attack the issue. The negative team may attack any of those stock issues we just talked about. The 2 most common stock issues attacked are solvency and topicality. A solvency argument is where the negative claims that the affirmative plan cannot actually solve the problem that it claims to solve. This may suggest that the plan is entirely ineffective or only partially effective. Either type of attack is useful at casting doubt on the plan's effectiveness. A topicality argument is where the negative team maintains that the text of the affirmative plan does not meet this year's resolution. While this argument often involves debate over the meanings of words and some theoretical issues related to the activity, it can sometimes seem like arguing over a technicality. It is, however, still an important argument for judges to evaluate. The debaters should make it clear why they believe the argument is important as a part of their position. And remember, technicalities are often very important in life, whether in a court of law, as part of a financial audit, or in discussing the fine print of a business contract. Topicality arguments mirror these sorts of highly technical discussions. Probably the most common negative argument is the disadvantage. This argument is where the negative team claims that the plan will cause some unintended negative consequence. For example, the plan might take steps to end poverty, but its financial cost may cause us to cut other important government services like defense spending or funding for Medicare, and thereby cause some unexpected problems. There are a wide variety of disadvantages on this year's topic, and these arguments are often quite interesting. Now, one strategy that some negative teams will employ is to offer you what's called a counterplan. This is essentially where the negative agrees that there is in fact a problem that needs to be corrected, but they differ from the affirmative on how best to address the problem. or how best to solve it. This year, there's a lot of discussion of federal solutions versus state level solutions, and that mirrors the national conversation on education. The judge packet that you get at registration will explain all of these arguments in a bit more detail, should you need it. And of course, it is also part of the debater's responsibility to explain their arguments to you in a way that makes sense to you. If they don't do that, they aren't doing their job as communicators. If you are in a room with other judges, you may see some highly experienced judges taking extensive and very careful notes. You will also notice some judges taking no notes at all, preferring just to listen. Either style of judging is acceptable, and the debaters should be adapting to the judges they have in the room. We encourage you to take some notes, if only to help keep ideas from early in the debate in mind once the round is over. But if you prefer to just listen, that is certainly acceptable. You're the judge, whatever you're doing is correct. So let's talk then about how to fill out the ballot. Before the round begins, please take a moment and verify which debater will be speaking first and second for each team. These names may not be listed in the correct order on the ballot. This is why just to the left of the names there is a box for you to write speaker order. Put a 1 for the first speaker and a 2 for the second speaker in order. Some teams may take an opportunity during this time to introduce themselves to the judge. Other teams prefer not to do so. It shouldn't make a difference in the outcome of the round. During the round, please jot down some constructive comments for each debater, as well as some positive comments. Try to find 2 or 3 comments for each competitor. This feedback is vital to helping the debaters improve their skills. They can't get better if they don't know what isn't working. And we do ask the judges refrain from making remarks about the competitor's clothing unless there's something especially egregious going on. For example, the student chose to compete without wearing a shirt. We have found that these comments most often are aimed at women and competitors from impoverished backgrounds, and this creates an implicit bias against these students, and we would prefer to avoid that. Comments about a debater's performance, analysis, research, and etc. are much more instructive and helpful to the student. We encourage you to focus on those. After the debate is over, please make sure that you render a decision, voting either affirmative or negative. There are no ties allowed in debate. Please also be sure to explain why you voted the way you did. What argument or details convinced you to vote in some particular way? The lines I like to use when training judges are, I don't care if a judge votes against us so long as I can understand why. With no explanation of why, I can't help my debaters fix the problem. If I do know why, then we can fix it, and that helps us win the next time. Finally, the final step is to assign each debater a rank. The debater who was most effective earns the 1. The second most effective earns the 2, and the 3 and the 4 then follow suit. No 2 debaters may receive the same ranking. Also, the winning team must have the same or fewer total ranks than the losing team. If you have any questions about this, feel free to ask a hall monitor to help you figure it out. They know how this works, and it is their job to help you. So let's look at a couple of examples of ballots that our team has received over the years. In this ballot, our team lost the debate. I have no doubt that we earned this loss. However, I would ask you to notice there are no negative comments provided from my team. Go ahead, take a look at the ballot. I have no idea what my team needs to work on to get better. In fact, the only negative comment for either team is actually directed towards the team who won. We've circled it here in red so that you can see it. To put it bluntly, this ballot is very little use to the debaters because it does nothing to help them understand what happened or to improve their performance. We have no idea why we lost or how to get better. I hope you won't write ballots like this one. Let's look at another example. Here is a far more useful ballot. You'll notice that the judge clearly explains why she makes the decision to vote negative. My students now know what position they need to improve to win next time. This is a very useful ballot because it helps us get better. And I would ask that you make sure your ballots include clear suggestions on how to improve, as well as some identification of things that worked well and that should not be changed without good reason. Again, remember, as coaches, we don't mind if we lose so long as we know why so that we can get better. So, what happens if you walk into a debate round and you realize that you know one of the debaters? Well, there's an easy answer. You simply step outside into the hallway and let the hall chair know what's going on. We can probably switch you with another judge, perhaps even the judge next door, to make sure that there's no perception of bias. Our tournament this year will involve some students from both Free State and Bishop Seabury, so there is a chance that this may happen to you. It's not a big problem, we deal with it every year. It also may be that you run into a student from Kansas City or Topeka who you didn't realize was going to be there, but maybe you knew years before, or you're friends with their parents, or whatever. Again, this is an easy fix. Simply step to the hallway and let the hall chair know what's going on, and they will take steps to fix the problem. While you are judging, we ask that you please set aside your personal beliefs and feelings about the topics being discussed as much as possible. Sometimes the topics discussed in a debate round can be very controversial, and they may include things like how best to approach global climate change, how best to approach problems of immigration or international relations with other countries, how best to address some hot button political topic in the domestic sphere. We all know that these topics can elicit powerful emotions and strong feelings of support or opposition. And we all know that everybody has their own implicit biases. What we ask is that you make a good faith effort to set aside your own personal thoughts and feelings on the issue and to listen to the analysis and the arguments made by the two teams and make an effort to evaluate which of those has done the best job within the round. We frequently get questions about how much weight the style of communication should have in a debate round as compared with the actual arguments made. For example, you may have debaters that make really strong arguments, but they speak so quickly they're very difficult to understand. There's a final note again about judging. We ask that you approach the round more as an educator than as a judge, and that will help the debaters learn, which is the real goal of all academic games like debate. Please help us make this game as educational as it possibly can be. So let's take a look at this year's topic. You can see it here. Resolved that the United States federal government should substantially reduce direct commercial sales and or foreign military sales of arms from the United States. This topic, arms sales to other countries, was debated during the 1982-83 school year, so some judges may remember either judging or even debating it. I guess this is just a reminder that some problems never really go away. However, problems do change, and this is a very different topic 36 years later. You can expect students to talk about how the weapons we sell can get misused by the countries who buy them, how the sale of weapons affects our international alliances, how terrorism is impacted by these sales, the economic role these sales play both inside and outside the U.S., and a variety of other policy issues related to the topic. You might also hear students argue about the meanings of some of the words in the topic, like substantially, reduce, and arms. While these arguments may seem minor on the surface, the way words are defined often plays a hugely important role in both the sales contracts involved and in the political agreements signed between countries. Finally, You may also hear teams discuss issues that may seem unrelated but end up being important to U.S. decision making, like how a plan might impact the U.S. Congress or presidency, or how other countries might view a change in policy in this area. So long as the team making the argument can explain to you how the argument is connected to the discussion at hand, it is fair game for debate. So sit back, take some notes, and listen to some of the smartest kids in Kansas debate this issue, just like it gets debated in the halls and chambers at our nation's capital. I hope you enjoy this process and make a real effort to help these kids get better.
Let me conclude on a personal note. I really appreciate the time and feedback that you will be giving these students. It will help them grow and improve their communication skills, which we all know will pay off later in life. Without the time and efforts of community volunteers like you, debate in the state of Kansas would wither and fade. We can't do it without you, so thank you. I look forward to seeing you at our tournament.